talking with Jacob Marks, who's behind Skram Furniture, a really innovative company in Hillsborough, North Carolina that designs beautiful modern furniture for residential, commercial, and hospitality spaces. Thanks for being here, Jacob.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So I know Skram Furniture manufactures gorgeous furniture, but why don't you tell us in your own words what your company is all about?
Mostly what we're all about is the intersection of craft, American craft, and modern design. And I think what we like to explore, what I like to explore as a designer, is that intersection to try to make each better and each give it a distinctive American voice.
Are there a lot of modern furniture makers where you are in North Carolina? Like how did you end up starting your business there?
Yeah, we're not tied in at all, really locally from a selling standpoint, but we are seriously tied into it from a supplier standpoint and in terms of drawing on a existing, relatively well experienced labor force and this huge network of suppliers that in the last few years have really taken a hit from the traditional North Carolina furniture manufacturing industry, which is all but gone, or that's maybe an overstatement, but it's seriously taken a pretty big hit. So yeah, I ended up in North Carolina just for personal reasons, and it ended up being a good fit for growing this business. And at this point, we really kind of attached to and proud of being one of the few companies, I think, one of the few furniture companies in North Carolina that's kind of trying to reinvent the industry a bit. I mean, obviously, we're much smaller than a lot of those big companies, but still, I do feel connected to at least the tradition of furniture making in North Carolina and want there to be, well, let me just say, at least I want there to be a domestic, furniture industry, and I want that to be based on good design and extraordinary craftsmanship and all the things that we go for at Scram.
How many people work at Scram? Are you the main designer and only designer, or do you have others?
Yeah, so it's my company, and I started it in 2001, I think. At that point, it was just me, and now there are six guys other than myself who work full time, and one other person in the office. That is six guys full time out in the shop, one other person in the office, and me. And I still do all the design work, and will continue to do all the design work, I think, at least as far as I can see. But yeah, I also still build stuff too. It just depends on what we've got going on and what needs to be fabricated. But some of the pieces, in particular, all the chairs, I do myself pretty much, aside from some of the sanding and finishing and whatnot.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's a lot of work. Um,
Yeah, it's a lot to be done.
did I read correctly that you're a self-taught furniture maker? How did you teach yourself to do such high quality designs like that?
I don't really know. It's just, I studied history in college, actually, and I think the writing of history informed kind of the mission of what actually Scram is today. I think they're connected, and there's this really interesting requirement in writing history to sort of blend precision and creativity in order to write history well and to do something that's create something that's engaging. And it's really kind of the same thing in at least our brand of modernism. It's that blend of creativity and innovation with painstaking precision and accuracy. So anyway, so I graduated from college, and I at that point was just thinking about pursuing a doctorate in history and teaching, which probably would have been a disaster. So I'm glad I didn't. But anyway, so I lived in San Francisco for a few years after college, or lived in Brazil, and then I lived in San Francisco. And it was in San Francisco I started to take some jobs, and where I was working actually in sort of high-end cabinetry, but I would use the facilities and use my off time and weekends and whatnot to begin to just build things. And it had just sort of evolved from there. I was in San Francisco for a few years, and then after about 3 years, moved to North Carolina with the intention to open up, you know, start my business, and that's what happened.
That's a great story. That's really cool. I think those are sometimes even the better ones than the ones who go through design school the whole time. I don't know, I feel like you have a unique perspective on it.
Well, it's certainly different, and there were times, especially in the beginning, when design school would have been nice, I think, and where I sort of longed for that because I had friends at RISD and friends at other schools, and to have that time to explore without the need to make money was something that I, at various times really really wanted or really would have liked. And even still, like I never really did have that time where you could simply design and explore a material completely without thinking about, the practical side of things. But that said, I think there have been times, and even recently, where as the business has grown, where I've been able to do that more. A good example of that is the new leather. I'm actually not sure if it's up on the Too Modern site yet, but there are these leather stools that we hand stitch that are a brand new design. And to be able to work in leather, which is something that I've always been interested in, and this is very heavy, kind of dense saddle leather, but that was really the first time in several years where I've been able to explore a new material and then apply it to something that was, functional and met all of our requirements for a viable product.
What's exciting you in the design world right now, either in furniture design in your field or in architecture, interior design? Do you follow anything that's going on?
I mean, I think that this may be a little bit on the obvious side, but I think that, and it may be a little bit self-involved or self-interested, but I think that something that I feel like we're at least a small part of, but sort of an emerging or a re-emerging American voice in design.
Hmm.
Like what I see in when I look around are companies like ours, often smaller companies, but I see a number of companies that are doing work that is high quality design, world class design, but that has this element of craft that I feel like is distinctively American, that isn't aspiring to be European, and that's really refreshing. That's exciting to me.
So, as a smaller company, what are some of the challenges that you face?
Well, the company's always evolving. I mean, it's always growing and slowly and steadily, but it's always growing, and that means um, that there's access to larger projects, larger markets, which then feed this cycle of growth. And there are thresholds that you need to cross when you're at the stage, or there's an important kind of threshold that needs to be crossed when you're at the stage that our company is, where you're starting to get into more volume, and you really need to figure out, this is a kind of an age-old story, but you need to figure out how to maintain that one-off kind of custom quality with slightly higher volume, and you need to keep the guys on the floor, happy doing volume and express to them the elements of doing multiples that are just as stimulating as doing, one of a kind work, even though it can be repetitive, that there's a kind of a joy in efficiency and productivity. And it's sort of a little bit of a reset for, in terms of the mentality of some of the guys who have been building with me for years now. But that's a challenge, I would say, is this stepping into doing a little bit more volume and maintaining that level of quality, I think, for which we're known. And it's good, I mean, we're sort of uncompromising. Nothing really leaves here that hasn't been pretty thoroughly scrutinized. So it works out, but I would definitely say that's a challenge for where we are right now.
Yeah, for sure. So is being able to work on custom pieces the most rewarding thing about being a furniture designer, or is it seeing your company do so well, or is it getting to work and to have more volume like that?
To me, it's all, I mean, it's literally all kind of interesting and fascinating. I love doing an order a small batch of chairs myself, or doing interesting custom jobs still, and I don't ever want to not do that work. But like I was saying a minute ago, like I think there's a beauty in efficiency, and I really like figuring out how to accomplish something with the least amount of expenditure of calories or uh, energy. Um, so there really, I mean, there's not. I mean, I love dealing with clients, and I mean, like every aspect of this, um, aside from the recession last year, and when things are slow or complicated, that's not so fun. But other than that, this is pretty much 95% exactly what I like to be doing.
Well, that's pretty good. That's doing pretty good for yourself. Last question. What book is on your nightstand right now?
Excellent question. Two books. There are two books. One of which my wife and I, she read mostly. We're supposed to read out loud to each other, but she ends up doing most of the reading. And that book is Bolano, and it's called 2666, and that's a fantastic book. Highly recommended. And my personal book right now is called Distant Mirror. It's nonfiction, and it's about the plague years, basically in Europe, specifically in France and Britain. And so it's sort of set in the 14th century.
Check those out for sure. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I really enjoyed that.
Sure, me too. It's a pleasure.
For more information about Jacob and Skram Furniture, you can visit skramfurniture.com. That's SKRAM Furniture.com. You've been listening to a Two Modern Designer interview. For more fun podcasts, inspiring design posts, and design advice, check out the blog at twomodern.com.